Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our way through the opening of Book 1 of Herodotus. We're going to look at the first half of Chapter 5, that is, the Phoenician account of the abduction at Argos. Huto men persai leguse genestai, kai diatein iliu halosen, Heuriscuse sphice eusan, tein arcain, tes ekthres, tes estus Helenas. Peride tes ius, uc homologeuse persese huto poinices. Ugar harpage speas cresamenus, leguse agagen auten es aigupton. Al hos in toi argei, misceto toi naukleroi des neos. Epede emate enkuos eusa, aide omene tus tokeas, huto de lonten auten toise poinixi sunek plosai. Hos an me katade los genetai. Okay. So, huto men persai leguse genestai. Kai diatein iliu halosen, euriscuse sphice eusan, tein arcain, tes ekthres, tes estus Helenas. Now, halosis is capture, the capture of a city, from the verb haliskomai, which means to capture. It's a deponent. Ekthre is enmity or hatred. So, hutomen persai legusi genestai, kai diatein iliu halosen, heuriscusen sphici eusan, tein arcain, tes ekthres, tes estus Helenas. Now, what about this heuriscuse eusan? We've seen this structure before, and I take this entry from Goodwin's Moods and Tenses, section 904. This is, as he describes it, the participle in indirect discourse. So as he says here, the participle is used with verbs signifying to see, to hear or learn, to perceive, to know, to be ignorant of, to remember, to forget, to show, to appear, to prove, to acknowledge, and with angelo, to announce, in a sense approaching that of the infinitive in indirect discourse. Here, each tense of the participle represents the corresponding tense of the indicative or the optative. So we've seen this previously a couple times in the Iliad, where someone will find someone setting, for instance, as in when the heralds came and approached Achilles. They found him setting, and he was, okay, and so forth. So this is a very common expression to have a verb of finding out or coming up on fulfilled by a participle. So, heuriscuse eusan. So they found this to be for them. Sphisin, of course, is the dative of interest. Now, how about this? Tein arcain tes ekthres tes estus Helenas. Now, we dealt with this in our detailed presentation in the grammatical portion of our Greek course regarding the definite article and the difference between attributive and predicate position. So as we remember, speaking of attributive position of the article, Smythe 1154, a word or group of words standing between the article and its noun, or immediately after the article if the noun with or without the article precedes, is an attributive. Thus you have the three possibilities, ways of saying the wise man, that is, hosopos aner, ho aner hosopos, and aner hosopos. Now, 1158 addresses the second of possibilities, and this is what we have here in the tes in ten arcane tes ecthres tes es tus Helenas. 1158 says that less often the article and the attribute follow the noun preceded by the article. So we have ho aner hosopos, the wise man. And you can consider the other examples, but he explains, in this arrangement, the emphasis is on the noun as something definite or previously mentioned, and the attribute is added by way of explanation. So, from Xenophon, tus kunas, tus kalepus, dedease. They tie up the dogs, the savage ones, I mean. So here, because of this order of, accusative, genitive, with our articles, ten arcane, tes ecthres, tes es tus Helenas, we have the beginning of the enmity, the enmity of the Persians against the Greeks. So this is just some of the subtle difference or meaning or emphasis that can be delivered by the varied attributive positions of the article. So, peridetes ius uk homologeuse per sese huto poinekes. Uga harpages feas cresamenus leguse agagen auten es Aegypton. Al hos entoi argei emisketo toi naukleroi tes neos. So homologeo takes the dative to agree with. So uk homologeuse per sese huto poinekes. So the Phoenicians do not thus agree with the Persians. And homologeuse, you see this very often in Plato when they're talking about agreeing or not agreeing with an argument that is being made. Now, kraomai is very common in Herodotus. Here we have kresamenos, the aorist participle, but it is a deponent meaning to use. They did not resort to harpage. Ugar harpage speas kresamenus leguse. So they say that they did not have to use, snatching or kidnapping to agagen auten es Aegypton, to take her into Egypt. Al hos in toi argei misketo toi naukleroi tes neos. So miskomai with the dative means to have sexual intercourse with, and naukleros, the naukleros is the ship owner or the captain. And so ugar harpages speas kresamenus legusi agagen auten es Aegypton, al hos en toi argei misketo toi naukleroi tes neos. Now regarding misketo toi now kleroi tes neos, this gives us an opportunity to look at the varied spellings of ship in the singular between Doric, i.e. if you were reading Pindar, or perhaps some Greek lyric, Homer, and then finally Herodotus. So we see that what we're basically dealing with is a fluctuation between the long alpha in Doric, the eta in Homer, and then in Herodotus, the epsilon. But one just has to be fluid in dealing with this, but there can be some confusion in trying to grapple with the spelling of naus, neus, neus among or across the dialects. So emisketo, toi, now kleroi, tes, naos. Epe de mate in guos eusan. Aide omene tus tokeas, huto de etelonten auten toise poinixi sun ekplosai, hos an me katadelos genetai. So, mate is from montano, it's the second aorist, to learn. And again, as we saw earlier, it's fulfilled by a participle. She learned that she was in kuos, i.e. pregnant, and aideomai is to feel shame before X, and tokeos is a parent, so tus tokeas, she being ashamed before her parents. Edelontes means like as a volunteer, voluntarily, of one's accord. Remember the verb etelo, to wish or to be willing to do X. And soon ekplosai is the first aorist infinitive, to sail away with, and it takes the dative object, toise boinixe. So epe demate in kuos eusa, aide omene tus tokeas, huto de etelonte auten toise poinixi sun ekplosai. Hos an me katadelos genetai. Now, this hos an me katadelos genetai is a little bit of a mystery, because we want it to, of course, to be a final clause. We're saying why she went away voluntarily. And so, for the sake of what, or with what in mind. And Smythe 2196, the verb of a final clause stands in the subjunctive after an introductory primary tense, in the optative, but sometimes in the subjunctive after after a secondary tense. Well, here, of course, this whole narrative is occurring in the past, so we are dealing with the secondary tense as our main tense. However, as Smythe 2197 says, after a secondary tense, the subjunctive may be used in place of the optative. And so he explains, this occurs in the narrative of past events. The subjunctive sets forth a person's previous purpose in the form in which he or she conceived that purpose. So here we have the subjunctive genetai representing the thought as it occurred in the young lady's mind. And the note tells us that Thucydides and Herodotus prefer this vivid construction. Now, but what about the on? I searched in my grammar and I really couldn't find an explanation for the on, and the only thing I could come up with is that sometimes on is added to deepen the sense of contingency. Hos on me katadelos genetai. Now, just because she went away with them voluntarily, that doesn't guarantee that she wouldn't be found out. Kata de los. But, because one of her handmaids might have told the king and queen, all types of other ways she might have been found out. But nevertheless, hos an me kata de los genetai, we have this more vivid, i.e. conceived from the viewpoint of the person at the moment they conceived it, use of the subjunctive. So here we go. Now let's read this again and take a closer look at our particles. Huto men persai legusi genestai, kai diaten iliu halosen, euriscuses fisse eusan ten arcane, tes ecthras, tas est tus Helenas. Peride tus ius uk homologeuse persese huto poinekes. Uga harpages feas cresamenus legusi agagen auten es Aegypton. Al hos en toi agei misketo toi naukleroi tes neos. Epe de mate in kuos eusa, aide omene tus tokees, huto de lonten auten toise poinixi sune plosai, hosan me kata de los genetai. So we see, we begin with huto men, because it wants to say, pointing backwards, that this is what the Persians say, and they also say the Kai, they say that, or they consider that this is the beginning of their enmity with the Greeks. And then the de is almost here like but, however that may be, but peri tes ius uk homologeuse. But regarding io, they don't agree. And so we have the gar clause then coming to explain the reason or what's the substance of the disagreement. Ugar harpage al, so not because of X, but because of Y. So the u balancing an al upcoming is very common, and you'll see it all the time. And then the de, epe de, ma de is just progressive, giving our next stage. And when she discovered that she was pregnant, huto de, under those circumstances, since she was ashamed before her parents, so the ide amen has to have a causal sense, because she was shamed before her parents. Huto de, under these terms, actually, so de has that sense of this is really what happened. She voluntarily sailed away with the Phoenicians. Okay, so our last slide is this wonderful map from Wikipedia that shows the extent of the maritime travels, shall we say, of the Phoenicians. Now, the Phoenicians were Jews. They were from Israel, where Israel is now. So you see them in the far western corner of the map. But and they sailed, you see, to Crete, to Cyprus, but all along the African coast, Sicily, Sardinia, and all the way to southern Spain. So we have archaeological evidence and of their trade routes. And you'll see that Argos actually isn't among their normal trade routes. So the idea that they would have slipped into Argos, maybe being blown there by a wind as they were leaving Crete or off Crete, and stayed there a while and made good of the necessity and thought, well, we're not going to come back here, so let's snatch this princess. Well, that could well be the case. However that may be, this is a wonderful awareness of, or a wonderful demonstration of the extent of the activity of the Phoenicians, who basically flourished in the ancient world from 1200 BC to 200 BC, but who really kind of get lost among the emphasis on the Greeks and the Romans. So we have this map and we have this account that begins to give the Phoenicians some of their due. Okay, so there we have it. I'll be back with you soon for the second half of Chapter 5 of Book 1 of Herodotus. Have a good day and continue to work hard on your Greek. Bye-bye.